May I speak to Mr. Bajaj, please, the district development officer? Yes, sir. My name is Sen. I am an IAS officer. I. Yes, sir, I came. Just lie, said Augustia to himself. Take the risk. About a week ago, sir. I've been ill, sir, and so couldn't call on you earlier. Yes, sir. Great stomach trouble, sir. May I call on you sometime, sir? Oh, right away? No, sir, that'll be fine. I'll come over right now. The buildings of the district council were much newer, bigger, and uglier than the collectorate, with just as big a crowd loafing outside it. Augustia was distracted by a big jeep parked outside a side entrance. It was painted like some European flag, blue, yellow, and white, and carried slogans in English and the vernacular. Use IUDs. Nerode contraceptives are good for you. Copper teas ensure a happy family. Have you been sterilized? Join the National Sterilization Program. At the bottom was painted in red, Official Vehicle of the District Health Officer, District Council, Madna. Maybe, thought Augustia, hopefully, the district health officer took part regularly in the Himalayan car rally for the insane. The door at the back of the jeep showed two deformed men wrestling, their faces ringed by drop shaped squiggles, each the size of a tennis ball. With a sense of wonder, he identified the drops as sweat. After scrutiny, he decided that the wrestlers, with football heads and thighs fatter than torsos, weren't supposed to be deformed at all. It was just the work of an atrocious artist, Tamsi. Through the wrestlers, the health department seemed to be saying that sterilization did not cause impotence. Of course, in the Jeep, they couldn't have painted a guy fucking with joy. The wrestlers were the next big thing. See? See? Even after your crotch has been poked, you can still be tough. And never mind if your head and thighs grow alarmingly, and can still wrestle with another guy who looks like you. And you will also sweat a little unusually, but then sweat has always been a sign of virility, no? People wandering around in the corridors, relaxing on benches, more eyes glazed with waiting, a mean, tough peon at the door, much like the constable outside the police superintendent's room, also suspicious. I am an IAS officer, said Augustia. It worked. Bajaj's room was furnished with taste, in complementing shades of brown. Two men sitting beside him, one woman almost demented with nervousness sitting opposite. Ah, Sen, come in, come in. Bajaj was very tall and worryingly thin, with large, woe-begone eyes and a receding chin, as though his progenitors had been a female spaniel and a Don Quixote. Augustia had expected a fat, complacent Punjabi. Sit down and watch the fun. We're conducting the interviews for the post of teachers in the schools of the district council. The giggle and wreck opposite Bajaj was a candidate. 23 applied for the posts. We called 18 for the interview. 6 turned up. All the candidates are tribals. The posts are reserved for them. With his elbow on the table and an immobile forearm, Bajaj flicked his wrist at one of the men beside him. Meet our education officer. The other man seemed too unimportant to be introduced. Augustia's entry seemed to have interrupted the interrogation. The education officer, solemn and enthusiastic, continued, What is 20% of 80? She giggled, put the edge of her sari in her mouth, and asked in return, 25? Bajaj pushed over a sheet of paper to Augustia and tapped his pen on one name. The giggler, Augustia read, had passed her senior school exam and even held a diploma in education from some hole. If she got the job, she would teach maths, history, geography, civics, and a whole lot of other things to 10-year-old victims. The education officer, with the patience of one who believes that patience is a good characteristic to exhibit in front of a boss, explained the question. 15? Another giggle. Close enough, snarled Bajaj and asked her to go. Last candidate, sir, said the education officer as a small, dark teenager entered. He was a BA. He mumbled the answers to the preliminary questions. Then Bajaj asked, "Who's called the father of the nation?" "Nehru," a pat reply. "I see. And what is Gandhi then? Perhaps the uncle of the nation?" Later Bajaj said, "Select the third, reject the other five." The education officer assiduously jotted down the pronouncement and said, "But these 6 posts have been vacant for 40 years, sir, and the politicians and schools have both been complaining for long." "Well then, appoint them all." And Bajaj shrugged and smiled at Agastya. He had a reputation for quick decisions. "You'll see, Sen, when you are BDO later this year and dealing directly with these things, what development really is. Are you okay now?" "Yes, sir," said Agastya, wondering what he meant. Perhaps he was meant to have collapsed under the shock of those interviews, and then remembered, oh yes, his stomach trouble. "Then join us for dinner. I'll ring up my wife and tell her." Bajaj seemed friendly enough, but Shrivastava had warned Agastya. "He's like a snake, a promotee, remember. No ethics." Bajaj looked at least 10 years older than Shrivastava, but was the junior in the service. The door flew open for a lawyer with a smile. He exuded confidence and pan spittle. "Aha, Bajaj Saab." His daughter hadn't been admitted in the district council college. She'd just missed the minimum admission marks by 0.4%. Just 0.4%, Bajaj Saab, said Bajaj. Now if Bajaj Saab could telephone the principal. "No," smiled Bajaj. "Let the principal decide. He has his job, I have mine." "Array, but which principal wouldn't listen to Bajaj Saab?" "You lawyers take such pleasure in burdening me with more than my share of work," smiled Bajaj. The lawyer laughed with innocent joy. "So it's fixed, Bajaj Saab?" "What is fixed?" smiled Bajaj. "Bajaj Saab, it just means a phone call. A girl's future is at stake." Agastya watched Bajaj refuse with his fixed smile and the unsmiling lawyer leave, banging the door. Bajaj smiled shyly at Agastya. With Shrivastava, thought Agastya, a lawyer could never have banged the door. In the first place, he could never have entered with such a request. A few evenings later, Agastya described the incident to Shrivastava, who smiled in triumph. "Promotee. That's the problem of the promotee. People just don't give them the respect the post deserves." Later in the week, Agastya called on the district judge also. "Come at about 5, said the judge over the phone. "Not for dinner, but for tea." Agastya said, "Yes, sir." He was learning not to be surprised by Madna. In front of the judge's house was a garage of tin and canvas. The drawing room was dull-colored and a little strange. It was bright and hot outside, but the judge had a tube light on. From the sounds, it seemed that a victim was trying to dissuade a murderer in the next room. "I saw you a few weeks ago from my car," said the judge, "near the collectorate. You were rubbing your arm against a tree, and then smiling your arm and laughing, and then smelling your arm and laughing." "Nobody switched the fan on because I have a cold," said the judge. Agastya sat and sweated. They talked inanely for an hour. He lied dementedly. In the corner near the door stood a packed shoe rack. Above it a cracked mirror. Beside it a noisy fridge. In the other corner a red plastic bucket. "He's built that garage outside," said Agastya to himself, "because he couldn't get his car into his room." Someone brought in Karachi halwa. "Will you have warm water or cold water?" "No, I'll have your piddle." The district judge was a little deaf. Agastya had to yell out his lies. He was suddenly angry. If I was master of my time, he thought, I wouldn't have to waste it here. I'm retiring in a few months. I'll be very happy to get out of Madna. I miss my Belagum, said the judge. Augustia abruptly warmed a little to the old deaf man. So many people wrenched out of homes they never wanted to leave. Will you take a little more halwa? Asked the judge in a threatening tone. I'll leak the story to the Dainik if you do. Yes, thank you. The judge's single remark about his homesickness had evaporated Augustia's irritation. Earlier, the judge had seemed a deaf and boring inmate of an insane house. The sounds from the next room now included occasional giggles. But now he seemed like Shankar or Augustia himself, just another person out of concord with the present. Everything fitted in, or seemed to. The invitation to tea and not to dinner was from one who loathed guests in a place he disliked. The mess of the drawing room was indicated one who never invited people home and didn't care what they thought of him. In some ways, the judge was actually sulking. Augustia wanted to laugh. When he said, I'll take your leave, sir, he had learned a little officialese and quite enjoyed it. The district judge got up, mumbling, Yes, yes. Augustia wanted to pat him on the shoulder, console him, say, Don't sulk, boy. It is I who should be sulking at my age. Then he saw the judge's face from close and sensed that age was in no way connected with the intensity of a sense of dislocation. You must be bored in the evenings, Sen. You can always telephone me and talk to me over the phone. I'll try and dispel your boredom. 2 nights later, but the district judge was in no way responsible. Augustia felt a fever creep up on him. About 3 in the morning, he had just dozed off. He woke up because the electricity had gone off. Without the fan, the mosquitoes gorged deliriously. The room was absolutely dark, no light from the veranda. He wasn't sweating much because of the fever. He curled up feetily and licked his dry lips. The small of his back ached. He could have got up for a tablet but didn't have the will. He wanted to lie curled and accept, even encourage the fever. The electricity returned. The veranda light again romanticized the room. The satiated mosquitoes were driven away, but the fan made him feel cold. He hid himself under a sheet. He could think of nothing. The mind is restless, Krishna. Where had he read that? He had read it but recently. He couldn't remember. Vasant brought tea at 6. I have a fever, said Agastya. Vasant looked at him with distaste. Well, don't give it to me. Digambar came at 7. Agastya sent him to the RDC's house with a note. Dr. Mumbled name came at about 8. He had a wonderful bedside manner. Agastya felt better just looking at him. He was small, squat, and pink. What the hell are you doing in Madna? Agastya asked him silently. You should be making a fortune selling your arse to the Arabs in Bombay. The doctor said, Just a little viral fever. You mustn't worry. You'll be fine in 2 or 3 days. You mustn't feel that there's no adequate medical help in Madna. We're here to take care of you. Agastya was surprised. Did his loneliness show on his face? Or perhaps the doctor said that to everybody, even to the collector. It was just the kind of statement to irritate Shrivastava tremendously. How can you take care of me when I have to take care of the district? Shrivastava would then laugh shrilly through his nostrils. I'll look in again this evening or tomorrow morning. Otherwise, you can come to the clinic if you like. He pointed to the prescription. His name, Agastya read, was Dr. Multani. Clinic? Aren't you from the civil hospital? Oh, no, said the doctor, as though Agastya had asked him whether they could shit together. I am a private doctor. Multani smiled beatifically. Joshi Sab doesn't seem to trust government doctors. I have treated his family for years. I treat all the important people of Madna. Collector Sab, SP Sab, all the important people. Later, when Shrivastava visited him, he was to say, "If you weren't an IAS, Multani would never have come to your room." Multani refused to accept any fee. "How can I accept fees from my good friends?" When he was at the door, Agastya remembered, "Oh, doctor, I forgot to tell you another symptom. Insomnia. I haven't slept for more than 4 hours a day in Madna, ever since I came here. Perhaps that could be connected?" Oh, oh no, but why is that?" He returned to the bed. "What is preventing you from sleeping?" Agastya marveled at the concern on his face. "Those Arabs don't know what they're missing." "The heat, I think." As though I usually stay on top of Kanchanjunga. And he wanted to add, "my mind." "Yes, this heat is very bad, but I hope you're not worrying about something. No problems or anything like that? You see, it's normally the mind that causes sleeplessness. I probably can't help with your problems if you have any, but you must sleep properly." No, no, my mind is fine." Agastya looked away at Tamsi's picture on the wall. What else could he say to a stranger? Multani added something to the prescription. "If you sleep well, you'll get well even faster." He stood up, short and pink but reassuring. "We must meet again, Sensab, but unprofessionally. Most of my patients only remember me when they are ill. When you are okay, my family and I would be very happy if you come home and have dinner with us. No formality, just a family dinner." He smiled. "I always want to tell outsiders to Madna, especially those used to a different kind of place, that Madna is also nice, that you can make good friends here." In the day, a few dropped in to commiserate, perhaps to check in if he was shamming. Joshi came first with Lal, the sub-divisional officer of Madna, a small, jovial man, then Shankar, smelling of booze at 10 in the morning. It must be last night's leftover stench, Agastya decided. Not even Shankar could drink at 10. Shrivastava came in on his way to office, scowling, looking uneasy, even guilty. "You still haven't brought the sofa back into your room. Where will people sit?" "What did Multani say?" "Oh, viral fever. That's fine. I feared cholera. You're still boiling your water?" "You shift into my house after this. Lots of room there. You'll eat good food and be more comfortable. You'll have company also." Vasant's children looked in to giggle and scamper away. Intermittently over the next few days, he wondered how to evade Shrivastava's offer. Staying at the collector's would mean the end of his secret life. He wouldn't be able to smoke or evade office after lunch. The domesticity of Shrivastava's house would be cloying when experienced in excess. He wouldn't be able to lie in bed for hours and stare at the ceiling and wander around naked, talk to himself, fantasize without restraint. But direct refusal was impossible, and besides, would have to be accompanied with reasons. Perhaps Shrivastava wouldn't mention the subject again, or maybe he would henceforth have to fall ill secretly so that Shrivastava wouldn't come to know, or he could sexually abuse the daughter. But the daughter looked highly unreliable. He thus relapsed into fantasy. The fever returned in the late afternoon, while Agastya was trying to read his English Ramayana. Shrivastava had, before leaving that morning, eyed it in disgust and shaken his head. Imagine reading such a fat, useless book. Imagine wasting money on it, and luggage space too. He put the book beside his pillow and returned to looking at the ceiling. A fever in the afternoon was less scary than at night. Suddenly he was laughing loudly in that silent, closed room. God, he was fucked, weak, feverish, aching, in a claustrophobic room, being ravaged by mosquitoes, with no electricity, with no sleep, in a place he disliked, totally alone, with a job that didn't interest him, in murderous weather, and now feeling madly sexually aroused. His stomach contracted with his laughter. He wanted to rebel. He said loudly, "I am going to get well, shave my head, put on a jock strap, and jog my way out of here." His voice startled him. He didn't want to listen to any of his music. All his cassettes sickened him. When the electricity returned, he switched the radio on to the Hindi news read at slow speed. He had wondered for years why the news was ever read at slow speed. Now it suited his mood. One more act without explanation in the universe. Later, the station played Tamil film music. He just left the radio on. The antibiotic capsule was blue and yellow and smelled like a stale, sweaty armpit, like a crowded Calcutta bus in summer. He wrote the name down in his diary, Ponomax, knowing that no one would believe that a capsule could smell like that, but no one would be interested either. How evil its contents must be, he thought, if when cloaked in plastic it stings like this. Multani had asked him to try and not sleep in the afternoon. Rest, but do not sleep. When the fever slipped away, he decided that being ill was not such a bad thing. He laughed again, this time at his mercurial shifts in opinion, but illness did have its advantages. He didn't have to wash or bathe or brush his teeth or worry about the faint stench from his crotch, rotting lizards and smegma. He had once thus described it to Madan, because no one was sharing his bed with him. In a better mood, he switched off the radio and put on a cassette of Ella Fitzgerald singing Cole Porter, A Present from Neera. "I don't like pop music. I can't follow it," he had said. She had rolled her eyes theatrically and said, "Ella Fitzgerald is not pop music. Please." Later he had liked the songs but had decided not to tell Neera. "I love Paris," came on. Her splendid voice warmed him. He felt vaguely deprived. He hadn't seen Paris. What a city it must be to have a song like this written about it. There was that song, Calcutta too, but that was just a mindless army-type song about whores in the war or something. He had never passionately wanted to go out of India, unlike Bhatia. He smiled, and he visualized Europe and America as madly expensive, strange, a series of minor misunderstandings with different kinds of people, a passage through clean, beautiful places with faces looking through him. "I love Paris in the summer." He felt an upsurge of affection for Calcutta and laughed. How Bengali! Only Bengalis pined for Calcutta, stridently insisting that it had soul. Drupo had once said, "You'll like London very much. I think you should write to that lovely bugger who loves us all. What's his name? Enoch Powell. Introduce yourself as Niraj Chowdhury's grandson and grovel for an invitation." He had then switched to Bengali. "London is nice. Bits of it are like a washed Calcutta, and all Bengalis will love it, being Anglophiles to their balls." But certain places, thought Agastya, just sounded lovely, romantic with the past. Calcutta did and wasn't. Istanbul, Vienna, Hong Kong. In Bangkok, they even sliced bananas with their cunts. Madan had breathed this information to him in their first week in college after his fortnight's tour of Southeast Asia with his parents. Then they offer the plate of sliced bananas to you, and you have to eat it. Otherwise, they feel very hurt. Who's they? Agastya had wanted to know, thinking maybe everyone in Bangkok behaved like that. Bus conductors, chemists, ushers in a cinema hall, just everyone. Suddenly these names were no longer a time-life series but palpable realities, fascinating only because unreachable. He had missed the experience of the world outside. What had that Thoreau said? That later I don't want to find out that I had not lived. But Thoreau was a little mad, and probably meant the exact opposite of what he, Agastya, wanted him to mean. Vasant brought him tea, yawned, and asked him how he was. "I think I shall die by this evening." Vasant sneered at him. It's not so easy. Just boil everything, not a single drop of oil. I'm supposed to eat only boiled food. That evening, Digambar brought him his first letter. At last someone is writing to you, sir, he said. His father never used Raj Bhavan stationery for personal letters, but his handwriting was easily recognizable. He took letters like he took everything else seriously. My dear Ogu, I am sorry for this delay, but I wanted time to compose my reply. I received your letter on the 4th by the afternoon post. I read it immediately and once again at night. I am unhappy at your unhappiness in Madna. You have not mentioned this specifically, but it is palpable in every line of your letter. At our last meeting, I perhaps talked too much, but then I did feel I had a lot to say. I had suggested then that your job will provide an immense variety and will give you glimpses of other situations and existences which might initially prove startling. Your dissatisfaction now seems to bear me out. I telephoned Poltu after reading your letter. He said that he had received the same impression from the letter that you had written him. He then, as usual, blamed both of us. Perhaps Pultu was correct when he long ago objected to my putting you in a boarding school. He said that a boy should always grow up at home, but he is so unpredictable that it was difficult to take him seriously. But Ogu, remember that Madna is not an alien place. You must give it time. I think you will like your job eventually, but if you don't, think concretely of what you want to do instead and change. Your old Manik Kaka visited a few days ago, last Saturday to be precise. He wants me to marry you off to his granddaughter. I told him that you were not contemplating marriage as yet, but he looked unconvinced. He took away your address. Do not be surprised, therefore, if you hear from him on this subject. You wrote that you intend to take a break during the puja. Will you come to Calcutta or go to Delhi? Perhaps you could do both. Calcutta continues to be hot. Take care of yourself. Don't be despondent. Write regularly. I shall endeavor to be regular too. With love, Baba. Agastya read the letter again with a half smile on his face as he pictured his father writing it. In his months in Madna, well-written letters would always excite him, disturb him by bringing him other worlds and perspectives. He would get to hate casual letters, those in which not a single line contained a thought, for communication would become very important, and a letter one side of a conversation. He himself would take great care while writing and preserve good letters, reread old ones, smiling at turns of phrase and recollections. Multani had given him 12 sleeping pills in fancy packets of 4 each. They were called Somnoraks and were made in Ulhasnagar near Bombay. There was a supine king on each packet, with hands beneath his head and eyes wide as chasms, and below him the innocent sleep, a sleep that knits up the raveled sleeve of care, the death of each day's life, sore labor's bath, balm of hurt minds, great nature's second course, chief nourisher in life's feast. Shakespeare. Macbeth. Agastya was moved as he had been by Tamsi's painting. The packet was similarly so ridiculous as to be touching. Smiling, he put it into an envelope and addressed it to Dr. Upadhyay, his earlier head of department. Dear Sir, absurdity again. Someone in Ulhasnagar has found some use for English Lit's most famous insomniac. I thought you'd find this more interesting than L.H. Myers. Otherwise, I move along slowly in second gear, as it were. He popped the pill almost with affection, but at 11 he was still fidgeting in bed, recalling that being unable to sleep after a sedative was what his father suffered. He felt unpleasantly older. A plop, then a thump behind the bathroom door. He hated closed doors. Perhaps a huge rat munching his soap and contemplating the plastic of the shampoo bottle. The sounds were repeated. He got up, warm more with tension than with fever, and switched on all the lights. His room looked so joyless. He picked up his white canvas shoe and checked it for inhabitants. One of his father's warnings. A flying rat, perhaps. Perhaps. Irritated at his nervousness, he opened the door almost simultaneously, regretting his rashness. He groped for the light. Perhaps it's a scorpion sitting on the switch. A flying scorpion, large and black, which settles on the back of your neck and stays there. Forever. Not even 12 Somnoraxes then could get you a night's sleep. In the light, at first, there seemed nothing. Then he saw the large frog in the corner. He took a quick look around to see if there was anything else and then relaxed against the door. How does one, he thought, get a frog out of the bathroom? The frog looked black-green and quite demure. Or is it okay to share one's bathroom with a frog? He couldn't decide, so he closed the door and went out to look for Vasant. Vasant's entire family slept in the open. Their part of the compound looked like a relief camp after a riot, bed after bed amid chairs and pots and pans. Vasant. Vasant. He soon woke up everybody but Vasant. 3 others got out of bed and shook Vasant awake. Maybe he stole some of my somnoraxes, thought Augustia. Will you come with me for a moment? Much to his credit, Vasant didn't ask any questions and followed, rubbing his eyes, rearranging his lungi, yawning. Augustia showed him the frog. There. The frog looked at complete rest, almost philosophic. How do we push it out? Vasant gave him a look. Augustia wilted. You think it should remain there? But I don't want to share my bathroom with a frog. Isn't its skin poisonous? A snake will follow it because snakes eat frogs, don't they? What do you mean frogs bring luck? But Vasant won. The frog stayed off and on for months. It was quite peaceful. Sometimes in those afternoons, Augustia would shield himself behind the door and throw mugs of water at it. But it always moved only of its own volition, sometimes hopping into the bathroom to look for a corner where it could immobilize itself into some amphibious nirvana. What a simple life the bastard leads, thought Augustia enviously, and after a few days gave it a name, Dadru. Early next morning, he sipped his tea on the veranda and watched the Ernakulam Express flash by on its way to Calcutta. Shankar emerged from his room, looking and smelling awful. Oh, Sensab, and waddled towards him, gently fanning himself with a 100-rupee note. For you. He leaned on the back of a chair, beckoned to Vasant, asked him for tea, looked all around, exhaled heavily, and said, I was up all night, singing. Oh, I didn't hear you. Softly, controlled singing. Shiv has gone to Kotanga to get me my wife. He should have been back yesterday. He bent and breathed tunefully into Augustia's face. The pearl has fallen from your nose ring, my beloved. Superb tumri, Sensab. Have you heard it? Augustia had a lovely song, but Shankar never sang a song that did not ooze sexual innuendo. Perhaps the falling of a pearl means the breaking of a hymen? Ch-ch-ch, Sensab, Sensab. Shankar looked outraged and drunk. What are you saying? It is a beautiful, simple thought. The pearl has dropped from your nose ring, my beloved. And I thought you could appreciate music. He sat down and slumped against his chair, occasionally shaking his head, ostensibly ravaged by Augustia's crudity. Suddenly he asked, How's the fever? No fever yet. I'm still a little weak, though. There's a frog in my room. Shankar looked at him, red-eyed and uncomprehending. It came in last night. It's still there in the same corner of the bathroom. Vasant insists that a frog in the room is a good omen. Shankar yawned. Agastya couldn't believe the color of his teeth. How is Jagadamba? She said I'd be happy after August. But you mustn't be flippant about a goddess if you want her help. See, if the frog is going to bring you good luck, you must at least first believe that it will. After all, everything around us, his forearm circled twice to encompass Vasant, the circuit house and the sky, is inexplicable. Fundamentally inexplicable. What am I doing in Madna when I should be and want to be in Koltanga? I see it as a profoundly absurd question. You will say, because you have been posted here. But why should I have been posted here? There are engineers who are from Madna and who want to be posted to Madna and are willing to pay 30,000 rupees to the minister for the transfer, and the minister doesn't want more. Then what am I doing here? My reason cannot cope with this world, so I pray to Jagadamba and say, here, please you arrange this world for me. Meanwhile, I drink and sing. Similarly, how do you know that the frog is not a good omen? You will say, my reason says so. But the truer answer is simple, that you have lived in the flats of Delhi and Calcutta, and that a frog has never been in your bathroom before, so you don't know how to react to it. And only because it is the unexpected, you dislike it. A frog is a good animal, and wait and see. It'll eat up some of the mosquitoes in your room.